portion which we read this week is Parshat Yitro. Parshat Yitro is about this idea of mitzvah. When we hear the word mitzvah, you think about your bubby saying, "Oh, you did such a mitzvah." When you helped unload the groceries or helped with the dishwasher or some kind of good deed like that. In fact, we often think about the idea of a mitzvah as just a good deed. And we forget that the word mitzvah comes from the root tzadi vav he, which means to command. A mitzaveh is a commander. You need to listen to your mitzaveh if you are in the IDF. And you need to listen to the mitzvah, the commandments that come from the mitzaveh, in order that you don't get in trouble. So in our tradition, a mitzvah, a commandment, is not something that you do just because it's a good deed. You do it because you have to. You don't do it just because you want to. You do it because you have to. How many of you have ever seen that wonderful bumper sticker that says, "Practice a random act of kindness today"? Nice bumper sticker. Not Jewish. Because the acts of kindness that we perform as Jews are not supposed to be random. They are supposed to be deliberate. In fact, they are prescribed. The rabbis actually teach that if you do a commandment that you are obligated to do, you get more points than if you do a commandment you're not obligated to do, which seems counterintuitive, right? How many of you have ever gotten a week before the end of the marking period an awareness that your grade was an 89? Well, that's good, because I used to get notes saying I have a 79. And so when you find out you've got an 89 or a 79, what do? You go to the teacher and you say, "May I please do some extra credit," right? And the idea is if you do a few things you weren't commanded to do, you should get some extra points so you can lift yourself up to that next level. Judaism doesn't work that way. Judaism teaches that you're supposed to do the things you have to do, and if there are things that you do just because you choose, nice, but not as valuable as doing your obligations. There's actually an interesting debate in the Talmud, in the Sifra, the rabbinic teachings about the book of Leviticus, about what do you do with somebody who sees a commandment and they didn't really want to do it anyway. So, for example, how many of you love bacon? Oh, you can admit it. Come on, this is a safe place. Thank you, Steve Kaufman, for being brave and letting us know that you love that sizzling pork. How many of you have ever had this tremendous desire to wear a garment of wool and linen woven together? How many of you never gave it a moment's thought? There's actually a commandment in the Torah that says you're not allowed to wear a garment with linen or wool woven together. It's called shatnez. You're not allowed to do it. And so Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, you're not supposed to say, "Well, I didn't want to wear that anyway." Or, "I don't like the way bacon tastes." Or, "I never wanted to sleep with my neighbor's wife anyway." What you're supposed to say is, "No, I do desire it. However, what can I do? My God in heaven has told me I can't." That there is a holiness that comes from doing the thing that you're not supposed to not doing the thing that you're commanded not to do, or to do the thing that you are commanded to do. Now, there are certain times we have to do mitzvot, we have to do commandments because they're convenient. For example, how many of you are here this week because this is just what you do every Friday? And for those of you who are logging on at home, how many of you, this is what you do every Friday now, except you get wine and cheese that we don't bring into the sanctuary just yet? I see you. How many of you are here, you don't normally come every week, but it's some kid's bar bat mitzvah, and so you kind of went? Come on, the whole Mullen family, let's be honest. There's a whole lot of Hutts here, right, who are here for Nady, right? So sometimes you go because it's convenient. And then sometimes you have to do the right thing when it is decidedly inconvenient. So think about what it must have been like to celebrate Hanukkah in a concentration camp, where you have to decide, do I eat my ration of margarine, or do I save it and see if I can use that little bit of oil to fashion some kind of a candle so I can observe the Festival of Lights in the darkest time in human history? Or, knowing that I'm starving to death anyway, do I fast on Yom Kippur in a concentration camp? Or is that the mitzvah and I should? I think about that in the aftermath of what happened in this last week in Colleyville, Texas, when my friend Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker saw a desperate person at the door of his synagogue who looked cold and hungry and without anywhere to live. The mitzvah teaches that we are to love the stranger. We are taught in the book of Genesis that Abraham literally left speaking to the Holy One to tend to 3 strangers and to offer them a pot of tea as well. Some would say that perhaps we should stop fulfilling that mitzvah, be more reticent to whom we open our doors, more careful to the strangers we embrace. And at the same time, perhaps there is no more important time to observe a mitzvah than now, to hold our door open to the stranger and to say, even though we might be reticent, scared, we will still fulfill that mitzvah because what can I do? My God in heaven has decreed it. In the Midrash, the prophet Elijah was walking along, and a man jumped on with him and said, "Rabbi, I have a question." He said, "The written Torah I know came from Mount Sinai, but the rabbinic explanations, the Mishnah, well, that didn't come from Mount Sinai." And Elijah said, No, I'm telling you, both came from the Word of God. So then he said, well, what's the difference between the two then? He says, it's like a parable. I want you to imagine there was a king who had 2 servants that he loved with a great love. And so he gave each of the servants a measure of wheat and a bundle of flax. So the first servant took the flax and spun it into linen cloth so that he could weave a beautiful piece of cloth from it. And he took the wheat and ground it into fine flour and sifted it and ground it and kneaded it and baked it and set it on the table, and took the beautiful cloth from the linen that he had fashioned from the flax and put it over it and then put it on the table should the king come and want to eat. The other servant did nothing. And so after some time, the king came and said to his servants, "Can you bring out what I gave you?" So the first servant came out and brought out the bread with the beautiful fine flour and the beautiful cloth over it, and the other brought out what he had been given, a pile of wheat and a bundle of flax. And so Elijah said, well, which one is more beloved? What does God appreciate? You must admit that the one who brought out the bread on the table and the beautiful cloth had given the king a greater gift. And so Elijah said to the man, when the Holy One gave the Torah to Israel, it was only given to them as wheat, from which we could bring forth fine flour were we to sift it and knead it and use it, and came to us only as flax, from which we could spin linen cloth to create a fine fabric. Each of us has been given a holy and a sacred and a precious gift, the gift of Torah, and we should seek to make it our own. We should seek to employ its commandments to fashion a world of justice, to build a world of love, and to create a world of holiness, so that together we might use Torah as the pathway to find ourselves together living in peace. Shabbat Shalom.